I'm Madeline West, and on my birthday, I set the table for two, just in case they remembered. By nightfall, the cake was untouched, and my phone was silent. They hadn't forgotten me. They had replaced me. If you've ever been erased quietly by the people who raised you, stay with me. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about the power of leaving without apology. And if it hits home, drop a comment. Tell me where you drew the line. I live alone in Silverfield, Oregon, in a small house I fixed up myself. Nothing fancy, just a one-story place tucked behind a row of evergreens, far enough from town that the nights stay quiet. I moved here 5 years ago, after deciding I needed something that felt like mine. It took a while to get it the way I wanted. New floors, new cabinets, paint that didn't peel when it rained. But now it's home. I run a small interior design business, mostly kitchen and living room projects for people who want their spaces to feel warmer, more lived in. It's not high-end or flashy, but it pays the bills. My family doesn't really call me Madeline anymore. When they talk about me, if they do, it's usually something like your sister or her. A soft erasure. Nothing cruel. Just a slow slipping away. I used to wonder if I had done something to deserve that distance, or if I'd simply made it easier by stepping back too many times. Either way, the silence grew roots. So when my phone rang 2 weeks before my birthday and my mother's name showed up on the screen, I just stared at it. For a moment, I thought maybe it was an accident. But then I picked up, and she spoke first. "Hi, honey," she said, like nothing had changed. "I was just thinking, what day is your birthday this year?" I paused. "June 14th, same as always." She gave a small laugh, one of those sounds people make when they're pretending to be casual. "Well, maybe keep that day open." "Okay, don't make any plans. Something's in the works." I asked what kind of something. She didn't answer, just, "You'll see. It's big." That was all. No details, no follow-up, just vague enthusiasm tied with a ribbon of mystery. 3 days later, Ethan texted me. "No hey, no context. Just clear your day. You'll want to. About time." Ethan doesn't usually text me unless he needs something. A last-minute birthday idea for mom, or help picking out bar stools for his condo. But this time, it felt like I was being let in on something. Like maybe, for once, they were planning something together. And maybe, just maybe, it included me. I told myself not to get my hopes up, but I cleared my schedule anyway. I canceled a site visit, turned down dinner with a friend. I even stopped by the bakery my dad used to take me to when I was little and picked out a small chocolate cake with a single sugar flower on top. Not because I expected anything, but just in case. It had been years since anyone in my family had done anything for my birthday, but this felt different, lighter, like someone had remembered on purpose. And for the first time in a long time, I let that hope sit with me, quietly, carefully, as if it might not stay. The night before, I cleaned the house, not because it needed it, but because I wanted everything to feel ready. I wiped down the counters, fluffed the couch pillows, and even ironed the cloth napkins I hadn't used in years. I set the table for two, a small gesture, hope folded into linens, tucked beside silverware I rarely brought out. I placed the cake in the center, still in its white box, the sugar flower carefully intact. I lit a single candle, not the birthday kind, just a taper I found in the drawer. It flickered against the glass as the sky dimmed outside. I wasn't expecting a surprise party. I wasn't even expecting anyone to show up. But the call, the text, they had stirred something I thought I'd buried for good. Maybe they remembered. Maybe this year, something had shifted. Maybe they'd finally noticed the way I'd waited quietly all these years, pretending it didn't matter. By noon, I'd refreshed my messages 5 times. Nothing. I checked Ethan's social media, just to see if there was a clue, A hint. A photo. Anything. But there was nothing there either. Just a reposted meme and a new favorite IPA check-in at a bar across town. 3 days ago. The candle burned lower. The frosting on the flower began to sag slightly. I moved the cake to the side and told myself they were planning something for the evening. A dinner call, maybe. A delivery. A group video chat that started with, "Close your eyes." I didn't believe it. Not really. But I didn't want to stop hoping yet. By 2:30, I was rearranging books on the shelf, not reading them, just touching the spines, pretending I had something to do. At 4:15, I checked my phone again. No new messages, no missed calls, just a software update reminder and a discount email from a furniture vendor. I thought about texting Ethan. Just something simple. "Hey, still good for today." But the thought of the possible reply made me feel worse than the silence. What if he didn't know what I was talking about? What if he said, "Oh, that, sorry. Plans changed." I didn't want to put myself in the position of needing to be told I wasn't included. By 5, I sat at the table and stared at the second plate. I poured a glass of wine. Not to celebrate, just to have something in my hand that wasn't a phone. I took one bite of the cake. It tasted sweet and hollow, like sugar and air. By 6:15, I opened Instagram, not to post anything, just to scroll. Everyone seemed to be somewhere: birthday dinners, parks, backyards strung with lights, smiling beside cakes, holding dogs with paper hats. I reminded myself that people post highlights, those timelines lie. But mine stayed quiet. No tags, no notes, no "Happy birthday, Madeline." I refreshed the family group chat. The last message was from 5 days ago, a photo of Brent's dog in a sweater. Ethan had commented legend. I had tapped a heart. No one noticed. By 7, the candle gave up. It fizzled out, the smoke curling into a room that still felt too clean. I sat there in the dim, not sad, not angry, just still, not waiting anymore, but not quite done wondering, either. What was the big thing they said was coming, and how could it happen without me? At 7:45, I opened Instagram again. I told myself it was boredom, but deep down, I was still hoping. One photo, one blurry group shot with me tagged late, a candle emoji, anything. But there was nothing, just the kind of quiet that doesn't echo, because there's no one left to hear it. That night, I didn't blow out a candle. I didn't make a wish. I didn't post a thing. I just closed the curtains, washed the second plate, and put it back in the cabinet. And for the first time in years, I didn't end my birthday feeling forgotten. I ended it knowing I had been left out on purpose. It was just after 8 when I picked up my phone again. The dishes were done. The house was quiet, and the candle had burned itself into nothing. I wasn't expecting anything by then. Not really. I only meant to scroll. Something to fill the space. Something to quiet the small ache that always hums at the edge of being left out. I opened Instagram, told myself it was out of habit, but there was still a sliver of hope tucked behind the motion. Just one photo, one tag, one belated post to prove I hadn't imagined the whole thing. And then I saw it. A story, just minutes old, from Savannah's account. I tapped. It opened with a slow pan of string lights swaying gently over a long wooden deck. Familiar pine trees swayed in the background. A banner caught the camera's focus. Uneven gold script stretched above a dinner table that seemed to glow from within. Then the camera tilted. Faces. All of them. My mother. My father. Aunt Margaret, laughing into a wine glass. Uncle Frank, even though he lived 2 states away. And Ethan, arm around Savannah, smiling like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. They were at the cabin, Lakeview Lodge. The one we stopped visiting years ago because it was too far or too much trouble to fix. The one I offered, more than once, to help restore. I'd drawn up sketches for new railing, sent photos of local contractors. Mom always said no one used it anymore. Apparently, that wasn't true. The camera held steady on the table, white linens, cloth napkins, candles in vintage holders, glasses raised, laughter mid-flight. Savannah was wearing blush pink, her hair curled softly over one shoulder, and above her, hanging just slightly off-center, was the banner again. Ethan and Savannah. Forever starts now. The caption read, "A night to remember. Second engagement. Family first." I blinked. Read it again. Second engagement. Not even the first. Just a party. A redo. And somehow, that had taken priority. That had become an event worthy of gathering. They hadn't forgotten me. They had planned around me. Without me. And then I saw it. The detail I wasn't prepared for. Savannah leaned toward the camera, laughing. The movement pulled her necklace into the light, a small oval locket, delicate, smooth-edged, and unmistakably familiar. My grandmother's locket, the one she wore every holiday, the one she let me hold the night before she died, pressing it gently into my hand with a whisper, "This is yours, baby. When you're grown, when it's your time." After she passed, I asked about it once. Mom said she was keeping it safe. I never asked again. I told myself it was just a thing, that the memory mattered more than the metal. But there it was, resting on Savannah's collarbone like any other accessory. No hesitation, no meaning, just decoration. I tapped to the next story. My mother, wiping away a tear, hugged Savannah close. The caption, "Gained a daughter tonight." I stared at the screen. It wasn't the forgetting that hurt. It was the ease with which they replaced me. Not hidden, not private, but celebrated, posted, documented for everyone to see. They hadn't lost track of me. They had made a choice, and they were proud of it. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The locket caught the light just for a second. Gold, oval, smooth at the edges. I paused the video, dragged the slider back, and looked again, closer this time. And there it was. No doubt. No mistake. The same etched border of tiny leaves. The clasp was worn just slightly from decades of being opened by careful hands. It was my grandmother's. Grandma Eleanor never took that locket off. She wore it to every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every one of our school concerts and graduations. I used to watch her fingers rest on it when she was thinking, the way someone might hold a stone to stay steady. It wasn't expensive, but it meant something. It meant everything. I was 12 when she let me hold it for the first time. We were sitting on her screened-in porch, a tray of orange slices between us, and the sound of crickets filling the space in between words. She'd just finished brushing my hair. No rush, no distractions. Just the two of us. She looked at me, not past me, not through me, but at me. Then she reached behind her neck, unfastened the chain, and laid the locket in my palm. "This one's yours," she whispered. "When you're older, when it's your time." Inside, there were two things. On the left, a photo of her and Grandpa Roy on their wedding day, both of them beaming like they'd just pulled off the greatest secret. And on the right, a small, folded paper heart. My name was scribbled across it in fading blue ink. Madeline Lee. My full name. The way she only ever said it when she wanted me to know she was serious. I remember asking, "Should I keep it now?" And she smiled in that quiet, patient way she had. "Not yet, but you'll know when it's meant to be yours." After she passed, I waited a few months. Then I asked Mom about the locket. She didn't look up from the laundry, just said, "Oh, that old thing, I think I packed it with her scarves. I'll check later." She never did. And I never asked again. I told myself it wasn't about the necklace, that it was just a piece of jewelry. I had the memory. That should have been enough. But watching Savannah wear it like a fashion piece, like it had no weight, no story, I felt something in me close, not out of anger, not even grief, something quieter, something final. That locket wasn't just a keepsake, it was proof. Proof that someone, once, had looked at me and said, "You matter. You're chosen." And now that proof was resting on the chest of someone who hadn't even been there when it was promised. Someone who had slipped into a space that had once belonged to me, not because she stole it, but because someone handed it to her without hesitation. There's a kind of silence that follows a realization like that. Not loud, not crashing, just still. Still enough that you can hear the sound of something ending. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't text Ethan. I didn't message Mom. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound smaller than what they'd already done. So instead, I let the screen go dark. I turned off the lamp beside me, and I sat there in the quiet, holding nothing, not even the memory anymore, just the shape of it, just the outline of something that used to be mine. I closed my phone and sat in the dark for a long time, not crying, not angry, just still. My mind kept circling the same image, Savannah in pink, laughing, the locket glinting at her collarbone like it belonged there, like it had always belonged there, but it hadn't. It belonged to a porch in late summer, to the creak of a rocking chair and the scent of lemons from the kitchen window. It belonged to Grandma Eleanor, and the quiet way she saw people, not for what they did, or how loud they were, but for how they carried their silence. That afternoon lives in a part of me I never touched too often. The part where things were once simple and safe. I was 12. We'd just come in from the garden. She had trimmed lavender for the table and asked me to sit while she poured 2 glasses of lemonade. No one else was around. No TV, no noise. Just the sound of cicadas and the scrape of her glass against the wood slats. She sat beside me, took a long breath, and looked straight at me. Not distracted, not halfway between sentences, just present. "You've got quiet eyes," she said, brushing a stray piece of hair behind my ear, "like your mama did when she was little." Then she reached behind her neck and undid the clasp, slowly, like it mattered. Like the moment needed space. She held the locket for a second in her hand before setting it in mine. "This one's yours," she said. "When you're older, when the time is right." I remember the weight of it, light, but not empty. I opened it carefully, and there they were. A photograph of her and Grandpa Roy, smiling so big they looked like kids again. On the other side, a tiny paper heart, unevenly folded. My name was written in her handwriting, looped and soft. Madeline Lee. "Should I keep it now?" I asked. She smiled. "Not yet, baby. But you'll know when it's meant to be yours." I didn't understand then. I only knew it felt important. Like she had trusted me with something more than a necklace. Like she saw something in me worth holding on to. After she passed, the house felt hollow. I walked through it once, touching corners, drawers, fabrics I used to know by scent. I didn't take anything. Just asked Mom, quietly, about the locket. She didn't even look up. "Oh, that old thing, I think I packed it with her scarves. I'll check later." She never did. And I, being who I was back then, soft-spoken, careful not to cause waves, never asked again. For a while, I told myself it wasn't about the necklace. Those memories were more important than objects. that Grandma Eleanor wouldn't have wanted me to hold on to hurt. But that was a story I made up to survive the silence. Because the truth was, that locket meant something no one else seemed to understand. It wasn't gold or photographs or sentiment. It was proof that someone had seen me and chosen me. And now that proof was dangling from a neck that had never been part of that porch, that glass of lemonade, that moment. It had been passed along like a thing without a name, handed off without question, without pause. What stung wasn't the fact that I didn't have it. It was knowing no one even asked whether I should. As if that promise, that moment, had never existed. But I remembered. And memory, when no one else does, becomes a kind of responsibility. One that settles deep in the chest and doesn't go away, even when the object is gone, even when the people are, too. I used to tell myself they simply forgot, that in the chaos of their lives, between vacations and milestones and new houses, they lost track of my birthday, my name, my place at the table. Forgetting is careless. Yes, but it can be forgiven. It happens in families. People drift. Things get missed. But that night, staring at that string of videos, Savannah beaming, my mother crying, the locket gleaming beneath candlelight, I realized it wasn't forgetting. It was something colder, something sharper. I hadn't been left out. I had been replaced. There was no gap where I should have been, no empty seat with my name on it. Waiting. They had filled it, paved over it, smiled for the camera and raised their glasses to the version of family that no longer included me. It wasn't just the locket. It was the caption, "Gained a daughter tonight." It was the setting, Lakeview Lodge, once called abandoned, now strung with lights and laughter. It was the way Ethan smiled at Savannah with the kind of pride he never once directed toward me. It was the silence of my phone while everyone I once called mine toasted to someone else. This wasn't an oversight. It was a declaration. They had chosen her, chosen to start fresh, chosen to wrap their memories around someone else's shoulders like a shawl that used to belong to me. And they hadn't done it quietly. They had done it proudly, publicly, posted with filters and hashtags and a banner that said forever. I think part of me had always been waiting for proof, some undeniable moment that would confirm what I'd been afraid to say out loud, that I was no longer part of the story they told themselves about who they were. And here it was, a locket, a caption, a party I didn't know was happening until it was already over. I sat in the dark and felt something loosen inside me, not break, just release. The version of me who still hoped, the one who rearranged the living room before birthdays, just in case, the one who made excuses for their distance. She went quiet. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't forgotten. I was written out, on purpose. And the cruelest part wasn't what they took. It was how easily they gave it away. The seat I once held at family dinners, the way Grandma Eleanor used to say my full name, the photo I'd always imagined would sit on someone's mantle long after I was gone. All of it had been reassigned, like a title handed to a new heir. No explanation, no apology, just absence, repackaged as peace. And maybe if it had been quieter, if the post had been private, if the locket had stayed buried in some drawer, I could have told myself they still meant well, that somewhere deep down, I still mattered. But they wanted to be seen. That's what hurt the most. They celebrated the replacement, and they made sure the world could watch. I wasn't just missing from the picture. I had been edited out, smoothed over, reframed, and the frame fit her perfectly. By morning, the glow of the screen had faded, but the feeling hadn't. It stayed with me, in the way I moved through the house, in how carefully I folded the dish towel, in the pause before I poured my coffee. There was no anger, no fire, just clarity, a soft, unwavering knowing I wasn't waiting anymore. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the screen. No rehearsed speech, no final message, just a quiet act of leaving. I opened the family group chat, scrolled past months of links and inside jokes, photos of Brent's dog in silly sweaters, casserole recipes from Aunt Margaret, birthday emojis for Ethan. I barely appeared. A heart here, a polite response there. My name, if mentioned, was background. It hadn't been a conversation. It had been a bulletin board. One, I no longer needed to read. I tapped leave group. No pop-up, no confirmation, just gone. Then I opened Ethan's profile. Unfollowed. Savannah's. 2. The photos disappeared from my feed like a vanishing act. I muted my mother's account. Not out of spite. Out of survival. I needed space. Quiet space. Not filled with posts that looked like joy but tasted like forgetting. I didn't make an announcement. Didn't slam a door. I simply stepped away. Silently. Deliberately. And it was that silence, the kind you choose, that felt louder than anything I could have said. The first message came that afternoon. Hey, saw you left the group. Everything okay? I stared at the screen for a long time. It was the kind of question people ask when they already know the answer. But hope you'll lie to make it easier. I didn't respond. 4 hours later, another ping. Look, I get that you're upset. But can we just talk? Savannah didn't mean anything by it. Neither did Mom. Still nothing. The next day, he called. Twice. I let it ring. Let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, another message. You're my sister. That has to mean something, right? And for the first time, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it sounded like a line from a movie neither of us believed in anymore. A phrase that used to carry weight, now hollow from misuse. It did mean something. Once. When we were kids, building pillow forts and arguing about cereal. When he cried after his first heartbreak and called me from the parking lot, asking if sadness was supposed to feel like hunger. Back then, it meant everything. But now it felt like a line meant to reel me back in. Not to listen, not to understand, just to smooth things over. And I wasn't smoking anymore. So I let the phone go dark. Let the message sit. No read receipt. No reply. Because sometimes silence is the clearest sentence you'll ever speak. Because choosing not to explain is its own kind of boundary. And because I'd said everything I needed to, the moment I stopped waiting for them to hear me. It was late Friday morning when I heard a knock at the door. Not a package drop or a neighbor passing by. This knock had weight behind it. Hesitant, but familiar. I stood still for a second, hand resting on the counter. Before walking to the window, I didn't have to look long. I already knew. Ethan stood on the porch, a paper bag in his hands, blue and white striped. The bakery downtown, the same one Dad used to take us to when we were kids. The bag sagged a little at the bottom, probably blueberry and plain, just like always. His version of a peace offering, his version of effort. I opened the door, but only part way. Enough to see him, not enough to welcome him in. Hey, he said, holding the bag out between us like a truce. I brought you something. I didn't take it. He shifted his weight, gave a half shrug. Look, I know things got weird. I just thought, maybe we could talk. Like actually talk. I didn't say anything, just waited. He cleared his throat. Savannah didn't mean anything by the post. Mom didn't either. It all happened fast. We didn't think. That last part, at least, was true. He tried again. I'm getting married. Maddie, can we not make this a thing? Please. There it was. The ask. Not for understanding, not for truth. Just for quiet. A request not to make noise, not to disturb the version of family they'd already curated, wrapped in celebration. posted in golden light. I looked at him then. Really looked. Not like a brother, but like a man standing in a doorway asking for convenience. Not connection. He didn't come to rebuild. He came to keep the surface smooth. I'm not trying to ruin anything, I said, my voice low, steady. I'm just not pretending anymore. He nodded. Like that settled it. Like I'd agreed to silence. But I hadn't. I'd only agreed to be done. He held the bag out one more time. I didn't move. Finally, he set it down on the porch step, then turned to leave. The door clicked shut behind him with a softness that surprised me. No slamming, no shouting, just the kind of ending that doesn't need punctuation. I didn't pick up the bag. I didn't check what was inside. It didn't matter. What he came to deliver wasn't bread or forgiveness. It was the expectation. A hope that I'd fold myself neatly back into the picture. Grateful. Quiet. Undemanding. But I wasn't angry. That part surprised me the most. I didn't feel the heat. I felt distance. Not the kind you measure in miles, but the kind you feel when someone looks at you and sees only what they want you to be. Ethan came hoping I would smooth the tension, patch the space with polite words and sugar. But I had no interest in being palatable anymore. There was no fight, no fallout, just a visit that didn't mean what he thought it did, and a door that stayed closed. The envelope arrived 3 days later, pale pink. Gold lettering, curled edges. It was the kind of paper that felt expensive between your fingers. Delicate, almost too pretty to throw away. My name was written in soft calligraphy, the kind that tries too hard to sound personal. Inside pastel clip art, floral borders, and too many exclamation points. You are joyfully invited to celebrate the wedding of Ethan West and Savannah Green. There was no note, no scribbled line from Mom, no, we hope you'll come. Just a printed card and a return address. Like a catalog, like a mass mailing with my name plugged in. I didn't open it all the way, just skimmed it once and left it on the kitchen table. Unopened since. It sat there quietly for 2 days. Then, on a Thursday morning, my phone rang. "Hi, sweetheart," Mom said, her voice bright, practiced. "We missed you last weekend. It was all very last minute. Last weekend. My birthday, the cabin, the locket." She didn't say it, but it hung between her sentences like smoke in a closed room. "I hope you're doing well. Things are busy. Of course. You know how it gets this time of year." I said nothing. She continued, tone untouched. "Ethan mentioned you seemed a little upset." I told him, "I'm sure it's just stress. You've always been so sensitive." "Honey." I didn't flinch. Not anymore. Then came the reason she called. The real reason. "I was wondering if you'll come to the wedding. It's important to your brother. We'd all love to see you there." Love. A word she used easily, like sugar on top of something hollow. I almost laughed, but I didn't. Instead, I let the silence stretch out just long enough to become uncomfortable. I wanted to ask, would you still invite me if no one could see it? If there were no photos, no guest list to prove still family, would you still want me there? But I didn't ask, because I already knew the answer. I looked around my home, the one I built without their help, without their applause, the walls I painted, the table I refinished, the life I stitched together from the things they never gave me. And for the first time, I saw it for what it truly was. Not a holding space, not a temporary corner I'd grown into while waiting to be let back in. It was mine. I brought the phone back to my ear and said, quietly, "I used to be there. You just didn't look at me." The line fell quiet, not disconnected, just hollow. Mom cleared her throat. "That's not true, honey." But it was. And she knew it. I didn't say anything else. Didn't hang up. Just let the silence speak. Eventually, she muttered, "Well, let me know." Click. The dial tone hummed through the receiver. I placed the phone back on the counter, picked up the wedding invitation, and slid it into the drawer beneath the coffee filters. I didn't throw it out, but I didn't plan to RSVP either. Some things don't need to be burned. Some things just need to be forgotten quietly. The day after the call, I left the drawer closed. The invitation stayed buried beneath the coffee filters, exactly where it belonged, out of sight, but not out of mind. Not yet. I didn't touch it again, didn't reread it, didn't wonder about the dress code or the seating chart, or whether I'd be listed as Madeline West or just guest, because I knew. Deep down, my name had already been erased long before the stationery was ever printed. A few days passed. The house held its stillness like a comforter pulled tight. Outside, the rain started early and stayed steady, soft enough to hear, quiet enough to ignore. I moved through the rooms without hurry, folded laundry, reorganized a drawer I hadn't touched in months. When the phone rang again, I let it go to voicemail. Twice. But on the third call, I picked up. "Hi, sweetheart," Mom said again, the same way she always did when she was trying to pretend nothing had happened. "Everyone missed you last weekend. It was beautiful, just beautiful." Savannah looked like something out of a magazine. I waited. "I know things have been a little tense, but Ethan really hopes you'll come to the wedding." "We all do." I told him, "You just need some time. You've always been more sensitive." That word again, used like a flaw, like an apology. She wished I would make for existing the way I do. There was a pause, just long enough to notice. Then she added, "Things moved fast. We didn't mean to leave you out. You know how it is." I stood by the window, watching the rain bead against the glass. My free hand rested against the frame. The words came slowly, quietly, no emotion, no edge, just the Ruth I used to be there. You just didn't look at me. The silence that followed was heavier than anything she could have said. Not dropped, just hollow, like she had opened her mouth and realized, for the first time, there was nothing to fill it with. "That's not true," she said, almost whispering. But it was, and we both knew it. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. Some truths don't need repeating. They echo on their own. She lingered on the line, then muttered something about needing to run. Said to let her know. About the wedding. About everything. Then the call ended. I stood there for a long while, not moving, just breathing in the quiet. Not the kind of silence that waits for someone to speak. The kind that comes when there's nothing left to say. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because pain, after a while, turns into something quieter. Something still. It settles in the bones like weather. You stop bracing against it. You let it move through. That one sentence, simple, steady, wasn't meant to change her. It was meant to free me. I had tried, for years, to find the right words, the right moment, the right tone. But sometimes, the truth only needs to be said once, and when it finally is, it doesn't need to be shouted or explained. It just needs to be heard. A week before the wedding, I opened the small drawer in my bedroom closet, the one I rarely touched. Tucked in the back, wrapped in a folded washcloth, was the locket. I hadn't looked at it since that night, since I saw it hanging around Savannah's neck in a story meant for the world to admire. But this one was mine, the original, the real one. the one Grandma Eleanor pressed into my hand with a whisper and a promise. I unwrapped it carefully, as if it might still hold her warmth. I held it in my palm for a moment, let the weight of it settle in my skin. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stared at it the way you stare at something you used to believe in. And then, I reached for an envelope. Plain white. The kind used for bills or bad news. Not padded. Not stamped with anything elegant. Just ordinary. I slipped the locket inside. No note. No return address. No explanation was scribbled in the corner. I didn't want it back. I didn't want it questioned. I only wanted it gone. I sealed the flap slowly, pressing each edge down like it meant something. Then I picked up a pen and wrote the name Savannah Green. Underneath it, in smaller letters, Coethan West. I didn't hesitate. I didn't pause to wonder how it would make her feel. I wasn't trying to cause confusion, or pain, or even closure. This wasn't a message. It was an ending. The next morning, I drove it to the post office myself. The clerk asked if I wanted tracking. I said no. Then she asked if I wanted insurance. Again, no. I didn't want to be able to follow it. I didn't want proof of delivery. I just wanted it to leave my hands. She placed it in the outgoing tray. I turned and walked away before I could change my mind. The door closed behind me with the soft click of something final. Back at home, I washed the dish I'd eaten breakfast from, opened the window to let in the late spring air, folded a towel that didn't need folding. I moved through the day lightly, not relieved, not heavy, just clear. That afternoon, a message came in. From Ethan. Did you send this? I stared at the screen, letting the question linger. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to clarify. The locket had never been about metal or memory. It had been a thread, one I held onto longer than I should have, thinking it connected me to something that still existed. But it didn't. Not anymore. And letting it go wasn't about erasing the past. It was about making room for something else. Something honest. Something I didn't have to chase or prove. I didn't need the locket to remember who I was to her. I didn't need it to carry her voice, her eyes, her belief in me. I had all of that already. And now, I had something more. Space. A clean drawer. An unburdened heart. A future that no longer depended on whether or not someone else remembered. That night, after the envelope was gone, I walked through the house slowly, each room quieter than the last. Not heavy, quiet, not sad, just still. The kind of stillness that follows after you finally put something down and realize you don't have to pick it back up again. In the hallway, near the front door, hung the last photo of my family I hadn't yet taken down. It was from Lakeview Lodge, years before Savannah, before the silence. All four of us, smiling, sunlight in our eyes. I remember that day, not because it was perfect, but because I had believed it might be the start of something better. I stood there a moment, staring at that version of us, the one I used to hold on to like proof. Then I lifted the frame gently off the wall, wrapped it in newspaper, and slid it into the back of a drawer. I didn't throw it away. I just didn't want to see it anymore. In its place, I hung something else, a charcoal sketch I made in college. Just a chair, simple, wooden, slightly off-center in an empty room. One chair, unoccupied. Still, I'd drawn it during a class on space and presence. Our professor had said the absence of a figure could sometimes say more than the figure itself. Back then, I didn't fully understand what she meant. I do now. That chair was a version of me long before I had the words to name it. I stepped back, looked at it hanging there, crooked at first, then straightened, and let it be. Not symbolic, not dramatic, just honest. I didn't crash their wedding. I didn't send a letter or post a story or call anyone out. I simply stepped away. Because the loudest thing you can leave behind isn't anger or explanation. It's the sound of a door left open, not so you can return, but so they'll know you didn't have to stay. And somewhere, in the softest part of their knowing, they'll feel it. Not guilt, not regret, just the absence, the shape of a seat once filled, a silence that echoes because it finally has room to. If you've ever walked away without making a scene, just so they'd notice the space you left, hit like, share your story in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Someone out there needs to know they're not alone.